collect and generate your ideas. Then you want to focus and order the information. After that, you want to plan your opening and your closing. You're going to decide how to do that. Then you want to plan and organize the body of your presentation. After all 4 of those are completed, we are going to listen and prepare for the Q&A session. So now that I've introduced us, I've introduced what we're going to speak about, and in the order that we'll be talking about them, I'm going to pass it to Sawyer, and he's going to discuss our first 2 points.
Thank you, Alyssa. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're collecting and generating ideas is to figure out what you already know about the content. And there are 3 ways to do this. There's a strategy way, which basically focuses on your general purpose and your audience as you explore possible content. Doing a data dump, which basically is jotting down what you know about your specific topic and then going back and re-examining it after you got it down on a sheet of paper. And then third is the mind map, which is basically an example of what you see here on the screen. A mind map is basically getting it down. It's more visually appealing, and that way you can tell what it is you need to eliminate from your content that's completely irrelevant to the topic. Second, you're going to want to do your research. In doing this, you're going to evaluate your sources, go beyond Google and Wikipedia to sites like .gov or .edu, depending on what your topic is. But you want to be careful because I think we all know that anybody can write anything on the internet nowadays. So it's very important to evaluate your sources to sort of validate what you have, or validate what you have that you're going to present to your audience. Third is generating your own content. There are 3 factors that you need to take into consideration whenever you're generating your own content. These are very important to remember throughout the whole presentation. So link meaning that you want to link your content back to your audience. I think a great example of this is the presentations that we give in this class. We are focusing on our audience being a bunch of JSOM seniors about to enter into the workforce. So it's very crucial to link your information back to your audience when generating your own content. Second is consider. What I mean by consider is basically considering a solution-based scenario. Imagine that you have no idea how to craft your content, and by listening to this presentation, you'll be better prepared to craft your content. It's basically a solution to the problem. And then the third is synthesize, blending several approaches and coming up with something new, something that's unusual, easier to explain to your audience. Next, I'm going to talk about focus and ordering your information. There are 3, or you want to figure out what your presentation objective is. Are you motivating, or are you sharing a vision with your company or with your future employees? What is it that you're doing? What is it that you want to accomplish? Focusing strategies that you can use, there are 3. The nutshell strategy, which is basically trying to deliver your information in a nutshell. A great example of this is us condensing the chapter 4 down into 5 main key points and delivering that information in a nutshell. The email strategy is basically imagining that you're conducting an email and you're conducting the email to an audience member who can't attend the event. So what is it that you want them to hear? What is it that you need? What is it that you want to say? So basically kind of focusing in that information into an email to clarify your message and get it off as efficient as possible. And then the third is the elevator pitch. I think we all know what an elevator pitch is. We have 1 or 2 at least, whether it be a business or a personal elevator pitch. But imagine that you only have the audience's attention for 90 seconds. What is it that you need to get across to them? These are the 3 very important strategies to remember throughout the presentation. Does everybody have them? Okay, good. Okay, so the next is ordering the content. First is the outline, which is basically, I think, what we all do to kind of get a organizational way to diversify what we need to present between the team members. And then there's also an idea chart. An idea chart separates separates itself from a mind map in that it's basically the final draft. It's basically all the content that you're going to use in the presentation. You're not going to take any of it out. It's basically a visual of what you are going to present. So now that I've talked about focus and ordering your information and collecting and generating your ideas, I'm going to pass it back to Alyssa to talk a little bit about how to open and close.
All right, well, thank you, Sawyer. So, opening is crucial to your presentation. You don't have a good opening, the rest of the presentation, nobody's going to know if it was good or not because they're not going to pay attention. So opening sets the stage. Not only does it set the stage for your audience to know what you're going to be talking about, but it sets the stage for you as a presenter to know if your audience is actually going to pay attention to you. When setting the stage, you want to grab their attention. You want them to listen to you. There are some common ways to do that, and there are some techniques to do that. One of the common ways to do that is what I did this morning. I asked a question, and if I didn't get the level of participation that I was desiring, I asked it again. I put emphasis. I wanted everybody to participate. I commanded the attention. I wanted to let everybody know that I noticed if they weren't participating and that I wanted them to participate. Some other ways to do that is starting out with a story or starting out with a video as we've done in class. Just things to be careful about with that, though, is make sure that you are tying it back to your presentation. That way, throughout the presentation, you're not wondering, okay, well, what did that video have to do with this? Or what did that story have to do with what they're talking about now? Another technique to use is humor. I'm not a very funny person, so I didn't start out with a joke. Just be very careful when you are using humor. It's a great way to wake everybody up and get everybody involved, but it can also be offensive in certain cultures or certain groups that you're presenting to. For instance, I'm not going to go into a religious convention and immediately start out with a joke about a priest and a rabbi. It might be offensive, and by being offensive or by making me seem unapproachable, my audience may not listen to me, and I'm presenting to basically a wall. So after I've grabbed their attention, I want to include a preview of what I'm going to be talking about. This is what the audience is going to be able to expect. I'm going to explain its structure. So like I did with 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I listed out, this is the points, this is what we're going to be doing. You also want to show them while you tell them. That's why we included the slide that, once again, had 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It showed we're going to talk about this, and so on and so forth. So you know 1's going to come before 2, but not after 3. So you know where we're going to be. It's a tracker, that way you know where we are in the presentation. So we're going to skip forward. We have a great opening now. We have everybody's attention. We're going to skip past the body. We're going to go back to that in just a minute. And we're going to go to the closing. So when you're getting ready to close, first thing you want to do is you want to pause and you want to breathe. Sort of like driving. When you're driving, you're getting ready to come to a stop, what do? You let off the gas. By pausing and breathing, you're letting off the gas. You're setting the anticipation, things are about to slow down, we're about to finish. When closing, you're going to have 2 types of closing. And for the purpose of our presentation, we do have a Q&A session, so that's why we're going to address both the initial and the final closing. The initial closing is going to come after all the information has been presented. The key of an informative presentation is to get certain key points across. If you don't leave with anything else, we want you to leave with those key points. So the initial closing is going to summarize those points again and reiterate these are what we want you to leave with. After we do the initial closing, we'll have the Q&A session, and then you're going to do the final closing. The final closing is just going to address that, hey, we are done. We thank you for listening. If there's no more question or comments, we now have this for you, or we're going to turn it back over to you. The final closing is setting the expectation that we're done, there's nothing else. Thank you. So now that we've decided how we're going to open, we're going to close, I'm going to pass it on to Morgan, and she's going to describe to you how we're going to plan a well-organized body.
Thank you, Alyssa. Well, I'm going to talk about how to plan a well-organized body. There are 3 primary structures. The first one is topical structure. It is listing all the main points that we are going to talk about. And an example of this would be this PowerPoint. And the second one is time-based, and it is organizing the information in chronological order from past, present, and future. An example of this would be the JSON expansion. They presented this idea to the investors. It is here now, and as a result of this, the JSON is able to hold more students. And the last primary structure is contrast-based, and this is presenting the differences, the way the information is
Thank you, Morty. So now that we've gone through all the aspects of the presentation, we've reached the end. It's time to prepare for the Q&A. In getting ready for this, you're going to want to decide when are you going to take questions. Are you going to take it during the presentation, or are you going to take it after? If you're taking it during the presentation, you gain clarity. As a point comes up that someone in the audience may not be clear on, they get to immediately ask, you get to clarify, and then you can move on. So as you're going through the presentation, people are maintaining a good level of understanding. To take it after, you maintain control and get to have the flow of the presentation in your desires. So you're going to value these questions because a question isn't an encumbrance, it isn't a burden, it isn't something that you're dreading. You actually value these questions because it is a chance for you to drive home the point that you're going to make. When people ask questions, it means that they're intrigued enough about what you're saying to actually come up with a question. Maybe there's something they want to learn more, there's something they're unclear about, and they're going to leave the presentation, if they've been given a good answer, with a lot more understanding about your topic, and you're going to have a lot of credibility. So you're going to practice answering, because if someone asks you a question and you're fumbling around and you don't know how to answer it, then you're going to lose that credibility. They're not going to see you as a trusted source, and it might take away from everything else you've presented so far. So listening is going to be a key aspect of being a good answer of questions, I guess. So when you're listening, you want to look like a good listener, maintaining eye contact, you want to have good nonverbals, good body communication. These people want their question to be listened to and answered. If you're just going to shoot off an answer back, they're going to think you didn't even listen in the first place. So encourage participation. You want to use these things called micro-encouragers. Does anyone have any idea what that might be, or take a guess? Anybody? You want to take a guess at what micro-encouraging is?
Like a nod.
Oh, you said something over there?
Oh yeah. Just like a nod, or like you're just, I don't know, showing them that you're listening.
Yeah, perfect. If you might have noticed me right now, I'm looking directly at him. He's telling me something. I'm listening. I'm silent while he's talking. I'm not getting ready to respond. I'm just listening. You need to process all that information, and then you can respond. If you're already thinking of your answer, you're going to miss out information that they might already be saying. So you're nodding, you're being silent, you're being attentive. So you want to paraphrase whenever they ask a question or make a statement. Rephrase it. It shows that you actually did listen, and helps you to clarify it one more time to yourself before you answer. And this is all going to go into responding effectively. So after you've listened, you're well prepared, you're going to respond, you go ahead, you stay on message, you're brief, you're concise. If they ask you about one thing, don't go off on a tangent to something irrelevant. So keep everyone involved. You want to encourage participation. Look around the room, make eye contact with several people. If you're only looking at one person, then they're the only one who's engaged, and they're going to start to feel uncomfortable. They might try and back out, and other people watching, if they're not being engaged, they're going to back out, and their focus isn't going to be on the presentation either. So the last thing you need to do is listen for challenging questions. There are going to be people with opposing viewpoints. There are going to be people with questions out from left field. There's going to be people with hypothetical questions and unclear questions. So always make sure you going back to paraphrasing, you rephrase the question. You want everyone to be on the same page, and you want to control the parameters of the discussion. Don't answer a question if you don't know the answer to it. Try and make a point of contacting them later, researching, or passing it off to another group member who may know the answer. That wraps up everything for preparing for the Q&A. In summation, we've gone over the 5 key points that we want everyone to know when crafting their presentation. So first, you want to generate your content. This is happening before you've even started to put anything down. You're going to make your mind map. Then you're going to organize how everything is going to go through one of the techniques expressed. After this, we're going to figure out how we're going to open and close. This is important because we need to preview the information for the audience. They need to know what to expect. And then at the close, we'll reiterate the points so that they walk away with the information. With planning and organizing, that's going to be this whole middle section. You got to decide what order you want everything to go in. Is it going to be topical? Is it going to be time-based? Is it going to be contrast-based? How will you present this information? And of course, at the end, you need to prepare for your questions and
developing this presentation, did you find it challenging to make a presentation about a presentation?
Thank you. So he asked if it was challenging to make a presentation about a presentation. I can definitely speak for myself and maybe some members of my group that kind of have this whole inception feeling. It's weird to present about something that you're actually doing, because as you're doing it, they're judging you based on what information you're presenting. Is he actually an example of what he's stating? So the important thing to remember is to always make sure that your content relates to how you're performing, and make sure that it relates to the audience themselves. We could have done this as a sell presentation, and that may have been for like new sales interns. But we did this as a tell presentation, as an informative presentation to inform graduating students who are getting ready to go into the business world. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any other questions?
What was the data dump again?
The data dump is basically jotting down what